We have this sort of comfortable idea that when we throw something away, it just disappears. Like you finish a bottle, you get a new chair, toss out an old pan, and that's it. It's gone. But what if all that stuff, the plastic, the metal, the things we just discarded without a thought, what if it doesn't actually vanish? What if it collects somewhere, maybe stews together, and then comes back as something else, something new, hybrid, and frankly, monstrous? Today, we're doing a deep dive into the work of Flor Barati, specifically her really unsettling, but also incredibly beautiful large-scale ink illustrations, the series Flotsam, Jetsam, and then some.
Right. And our mission here, for you listening, is pretty straightforward, but also quite profound. We want to unpack how Barati takes this almost mind-blowing technical skill and merges it with, well, the grim reality of all the waste we produce. She's essentially creating what she refers to as a bestiary of modern monstrosities. These aren't creatures from ancient myths. They're born directly from our own negligence, from our trash. And what's really striking, I think, is how she uses this aesthetic mastery, this beauty, to make the ecological warning impossible to ignore.
Okay, yeah, let's dig into that, starting with her foundation as an artist, because you're right, the skill level is just extraordinary. She's known for this incredible precision, and her background is, well, it's fascinating. She trained meticulously as a jewelry designer.
Yeah.
How does that feed into these huge kind of grotesque ink drawings?
It's absolutely crucial. Think about jewelry design. It demands miniaturization, incredible patience, and articulating detail on a tiny, tiny scale. You learn to handle superfine lines, manage complex forms, make sure every little facet is just right, and that precision, it translates directly onto the canvas with her ink work. She approaches these large pieces with that same, almost surgical patience. It creates this really unnerving effect because the monsters themselves, they're technically flawless. They feel real.
That makes a lot of sense. That flawlessness kind of forces you to accept them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the idea for these specific monsters, that came from two places, right? One is this really old, almost mythological sense of horror.
Exactly. She was apparently deeply fascinated with Lovecraftian horror for a long time. The eerie writing style, the hints of ancient, terrible things just lurking beneath the surface, creatures that sort of defy easy categorization.
Okay, so she had the jewelry design skill set and this Lovecraftian conceptual angle.
Yeah.
But where did the plastic bottles and like old kitchen stuff come in?
Sure.
When did that become part of the horror?
It was actually a very modern trigger, almost accidental. It wasn't just theoretical thinking about consumerism. It really crystallized for her when she got invited to be part of an exhibition in 2014 called Junk Shop.
Yeah.
And suddenly, she had to engage artistically with piles of actual junk, actual detritus. And that seems to be the moment where that philosophical horror from Lovecraft, the idea of things too awful to truly grasp, just collided head-on with the visible, tangible waste of our consumer society.
So those classic Lovecraft creatures, the chimeras, gorgons, cyclops.
Yeah.
They were drawn from these deep, dark, subterranean legends, right? Forces beyond human control.
And that's the key difference Barati is highlighting. She consciously taps into that lineage, that idea of monstrosity, but she makes this really powerful shift. She's basically showing us that the deep, dark places today aren't ancient caves anymore. There are landfills. They're the garbage patches in the ocean. Her horrors aren't bubbling up from forgotten myths. They are born directly from the surface refuse of industrialized consumption. She takes everyday things, plastic, utensils, and reveals their terrifying potential future when they gain this kind of synthetic life. It's like an updated mythology where the horror isn't divine wrath, it's just our own trash coming back to bite us.
Yeah, making the familiar utterly alien. That's profoundly chilling.
Yeah.
Now, this is where that precision training really comes into play, and also where the whole idea starts to feel disturbingly real. Barati didn't just, sketch out a monster from her head.
Yeah.
She had this unusual, almost scientific process for building these chimeras. How did she actually construct them?
Right. It's like she became a kind of biological engineer, but using refuse. So first, she did a huge amount of prep work. She created hundreds of separate, incredibly detailed ink studies of natural things, plants, reptiles, mammals, sea creatures. We're talking super detailed drawings of ferns, orchids, snakes, lizards, just hundreds of individual natural components.
Oh, okay, like building a visual library of nature.
Exactly, a library of parts. And then she took those studies, the plant bits, the reptile scales, and she cut them up, meticulously categorize them, and then recombine them. They became the genetic raw material, so to speak, for her hybrid creatures.
Oh.
It's fascinating because the process itself sort of mirrors how pollution works chemically, right? Taking distinct biological forms and forcing them into these awful new combinations with our discarded materials.
And the medium she uses is Indian ink on canvas.
I think a lot of us associate ink drawing with paper, maybe smaller pieces. What does using ink on a big canvas add here, technically or thematically?
Well, technically, it adds permanence and a high degree of difficulty, which definitely boosts the theme. Indian ink is famously unforgiving. There's no easy erasing. Once that line is down, it's pretty much permanent.
Right.
Doing that on a large canvas, it magnifies the difficulty. It turns the drawing process into this act of almost ritualistic dedication. And that permanence, it mirrors the permanence of the pollution she's depicting. These aren't just quick sketches. They're fixed, detailed records of our environmental mistakes. The sources we looked at call them true marvels of detail, where every scale, feather, and frond is articulated with precision. And that intense technique creates this incredible push and pull for the viewer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're immediately drawn close to admire Barati's mastery. You want to appreciate the skill, but that very delicacy, like you said, it doesn't soften the image at all. It actually makes the grotesqueness even sharper.
It absolutely does. It's like a seduction followed by a shock. You lean in, admiring the beautiful inkwork, the lines, the shading, and then you realize you're looking at something truly hideous, a creature that's part python, part plastic milk jug, you know. The high level of artistry makes the message inescapable. You can't just dismiss it as like crude protest art. This is high art delivering a deeply uncomfortable truth.
Can you give us some specific examples of these fusions? What
Yeah.
kind of recognizable junk gets woven into these creatures?
Oh yeah, the materials are key because they're so common. Plastic bottles, kitchen stuff, those cheap plastic patio chairs. So for instance, picture this huge reptilian body, maybe like a crocodile, but instead of normal wings or fins, it has bottle wings. The structure of the wings is clearly formed from the translucent, ridged plastic of discarded bottles.
Wow. I can picture the light hitting the ridges of like a soda
I can.
bottle, but attached to something predatory. That is genuinely disturbing.
Or how about this fusion of luxury and waste? A magnificent peacock. Its body is rendered in that perfect, detailed ink, but its famous tail. Instead of those beautiful iridescent eye spots, it's this fantastic cookware tail.
Cookware.
Yeah, you see pot handles, the curve of old frying pans, the holes from strainers, all meticulously drawn like they're biological structures like feathers. It turns the peacock's display into this showcase of domestic waste.
So she's taking the very objects of our convenience things for cooking, drinking, and basically weaponizing them, integrating them into this monstrous life cycle.
Exactly. And maybe the most visceral one, showing marine pollution coming back, is the leviathan fish. Imagine this huge deep-sea monster, but it's got these massive chair fins.
That's chair fins. You mean like...
Like the recognizable structure of a cheap white stackable plastic garden chair has mutated into its fins, functional skeletal fins made of patio furniture.
Oh my God.
It's just this visual shock, right? Seeing discarded furniture as part of an ocean predator. It just screams about the sheer scale of the plastic problem.
Yeah, that transition from admiring the skill to seeing what is drawn so skillfully. It shifts the focus entirely onto the message. These things are undeniably a mirror of humanity's ecological negligence. We're literally seeing our junk reflected back at us in monster form.
She's performing a kind of dark alchemy, isn't she? Transmuting actual junk into this powerful cautionary mythology and forcing us to see this terrifying feedback loop. The stuff we think we throw away, the stuff we sink or bury and try to forget. She makes it so clear they do not disappear. They mutate, resurface, and return to us.
So it's not just showing pollution, it's showing evolution, like twisted and accelerated by pollution. These aren't just artwork, they feel like warnings. They're described as omens, right? And beasts fashioned by our neglect rising from the undertow of our own excess.
That idea of the undertow is really powerful, I think. It suggests forces that are now beyond our direct control. We set the waste adrift, often somewhere out of sight, thinking it's just inert trash. But Barati's work suggests the sheer volume gives it a new, terrible kind of agency. It's like the material manifestation of the environmental debt we've accrued. It doesn't just sit there. It's being actively reorganized into something that could threaten us.
So if the old Lovecraftian monsters were scary because they are ancient and unknown, Barati's monsters are scary because they're new and entirely our own fault.
Absolutely. So what does that mean for us looking at this now? Barati's core insight feels like a really sober warning. Her art shows a future where our cast-offs, everything we just let drift away, takes on a life of its own. They form, as the source puts it, calamities we ourselves set adrift but can no longer command. That chairfin creature. It isn't asking for our apology. It just exists as a consequence. It highlights how we're already building the next generation of myths from our own environmental failures.
Wow. Okay, this has been a, well, profoundly unnerving but also visually stunning deep dive into Flora Barati's world. We've really unpacked how her incredible precision, coming from that jewelry background, transforms everyday waste bottles, chairs, pans into these figures that are both beautiful and terrifying. She uses that beauty, that skill, to make us confront what the earth, and maybe especially the sea, really remembers about us.
Exactly. And it leaves us with a final thought, something for you to maybe chew on, building on this idea that beauty can sometimes mask a really sharp warning. If the truly great horrors are the ones we actually make ourselves and then discard, think about the next time you see some common piece of trash. Maybe something simple, like a styrofoam cup or an old tire by the side of the road. And just consider, what future combination of biology and toxic waste might that object eventually become part of? What unstoppable monstrous omen is it destined to be, rising from that undertow? The materials for tomorrow's myths, they're being thrown out right now.